If you want to, sing it like ooh. If you want to.
Thank you. Let's start something.
Good morning, everybody. Morning. My name is Seth Shore. I'm the CEO of Fifth Street Gaming, visiting here from Las Vegas. Fifth Street Gaming, we own and operate casinos, sports bars, restaurants, mostly in Nevada. In 2015, our casino took the first legal esports wager in the United States. Going back 7 years now. You can't make this up. On October 18th, that's today, right? 2018, we were in this room. Okay, 4 years ago today, the Esports Thought Leader Summit here at Stockton. So 4 years ago today, that was very nice. In addition to being CEO of Fifth Street Gaming, I am on the Esports Technical Advisory Committee in Nevada, which is part of the Nevada Game Control Board. I sit on the board of GameCo, we referenced earlier, also Skills, which is a mobile esports platform. And the position that I find to be most interesting is I am an executive in residence at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I love being in academic environments. I don't think you can find any city in the United States that is cultivating innovation that doesn't have a strong university system. Universities play an important role in innovation, arguably the most important, the most stable. As we talk about esports and esports betting, commercial organizations, companies are very fickle. And it's the university system that has long-term stability and fosters long-term innovation and growth. As I mentioned, I was here 4 years ago. We're going to talk about the long-term commitment that is needed to find esports place in the gambling environment, in the casino environment, which we're going to talk about today. So last night was great. Talked about a lot of things. We're going to get very focused today on esports betting. We're here in Atlantic City, right by the casinos. That's the piece that we're going to focus on. That's the piece that I hope many of you are interested in. Also want to let you know that we are going to do Q&A. So I'm telling you that now, so you can think about questions. Because when I ask for questions, if I get like no hands, it's going to be very disappointing. Remember, we're in a university. It'd be very bad if the teacher asks for questions and everybody's silent. So I want to know what you guys are interested in, so we're going to spend some time on that. All right, let's move on to our panelists. We already met you, Anthony, so we're going to move on to Anthony too. If you could just give us a very brief background as it relates to esports and esports wagering. Who wants to start?
Sure. I guess this as Seth mentioned, we were here 4 years ago at the Esports Thought Leaders Conference. I'm a local guy. Esports is something that my company started taking on about 4 years ago. We've been working with the New Jersey Assembly, the YA 637, and the amendment that's coming up with CJ and Fox Rothschild. We've been very instrumental, as much as we can be, in establishing esports throughout the United States as well. I chair the Esports Trade Association's regulated video game and esports wagering committee with Eric Weiss, who couldn't be here today because of COVID, unfortunately. He did send me a sick, actually. And part of what we're doing is educating people and at the same time developing the roadmap. So we are developing the processes and the framework and understanding how it's going to work. And it's a tough job. There's a lot of different groups. We're basically taking two industries, three if you count the tech industry, combining them together, so video games, iGaming, and the tech industry, into a very complicated, well, it's complicated to me anyway. We're trying to create a simple version of how this works, but there's so many different things to consider. There's so many different kinds of games. There's so many different types of wagering you have to take into account, and whether it's skill-based or peer-to-peer or third-party wagering. It's a lot to take in. So part of our journey over the last 4 years is getting all that stuff together and also creating a framework to promote it. So we'll be launching Esports Illustrated next year, which is a partnership with the Arena Group and Sports Illustrated. And part of the reason we're launching Esports Illustrated is because we want to create a mass market media vehicle so that people know simple things like what's going on tomorrow, what team should I watch, what are the big events, who are the industry leaders, who are the best players and best teams. As part of that database, the database will be a player database starting at the collegiate and then moving into the pros. It'll be the first national collegiate database. From that, I would assume some companies will want to take that database and create wagering lines from it, but the intention is to just standardize esports across the media side and standardize esports across the wagering side.
CJ Fisher, I'm a partner with Fox Rothschild here in Atlantic City. I'm also co-chair of Fox's National Gaming Department. We represent a variety of stakeholders in the gaming industry with licensing, compliance, and regulatory matters. So anything from casinos, sports, and iGaming operators, service providers like data and odds providers, sports betting context, manufacturers, table games, slot machines, investors in the industry, and specifically for esports, we represented operators, companies like Anthony's company, odds providers, as well, specifically related to esports. And as it was alluded to earlier, when you're talking about your esports wagering on third-party events, there's a lot of overlap between sports betting because really it's another event. Rather than an NBA game, an NFL game, an MLB game as your event, you're talking about an esports tournament or what have you as your event. So that's kind of how a lot of states are approaching esports wagering, and you start talking about licensing and regulatory compliance issues. There's a lot of overlap with sports betting. I think we'll probably touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great segue. Hopefully everybody is on the same page, especially after that last great panel. Esports is massive. I think we all know that. When I spoke about this like 6-7 years ago, I really had to start with esports 101. How big it is, what it is, that. We all agree it's massive. And being here today representing the casino industry, we're still trying to figure out how to leverage that very wide audience and integrate it into our casino resort experience. I think Ari had asked a few questions around monetization, and there was a lot of talk about sponsorships, and that is a big piece of the esports ecosystem economically. But when it comes to casinos, there are a few different ways that casinos can monetize esports, but esports betting is clearly one of them, and the one that I'd like to focus on today. Now, esports betting, that can be defined in a few ways, but I'd really like to get into the detail in terms of what is regulated today in New Jersey, what this bill is that I'm hearing you're writing. That's interesting, and I'd love to touch on what's going on in Nevada. So, CJ, do you want to start there?
Yeah, and I guess just starting with New Jersey, and Anthony touched on it a bit later. Esports wagering is legal in New Jersey. I think the first wager was allowed in late 2019. It's a little different than traditional sports betting. You know, the division has had some restrictions for how you can wager on a sports event, such as a $1,000 max bet preventing in-play wagering, and wager types as well. You know, rather than having a variety of different prop bets and things that you can bet on in the sports betting context, you might not have that with wagering on esports events. And like Anthony had touched on, there's an approval process. You have to give, if there's a new event that you want to accept wagers on as an operator, or a type of wager, you can't just offer that as an operator. You have to go to the division and get approval for that. And particularly with new events, the division wants to have assurances that the integrity of that event is preserved. So they want to see who's the governing body over that event, and do they have integrity policies? Are they monitoring these events before they're going to sign off on approving that? Nevada is in many ways similar. You have to seek approval for a new esports event or a new type of wager. Nevada has done something more recently than their initial approach, where they'll approve an entire season of a particular league or event once it's approved, if it's hosted by the same company. But as far as restrictions, it's very similar in Nevada as far as types of wagers that can be approved, and limits on the amount that you can wager, or the restricted in-play wagering on esports. And Seth had mentioned the bill in New Jersey. I think New Jersey has really stood out as wanting to be at the forefront of esports wagering, and the division is a huge part of that and that mentality. And this wouldn't be the first time that there's an amendment to the Casino Control Act related to esports wagering. Back when the legislation first passed after PASPA, the way that the statute read, it under a prohibited sports event, it read prohibited sports events for high school sports, competitive video games, and esports. And a lot of people interpreted that as being three separate prohibitions: that high school sports, you can't bet on that; esports, you can't bet on that; competitive video games, you can't bet on that either. So initially there was a lot of confusion over how this should be interpreted. The division fortunately put out some regulations to clarify that high school qualified each one of those things, that really the prohibition was just high school sports, high school esports, and high school competitive video games. That was later codified in statute in 2021, just to remove all doubt. And as Anthony too alluded to, there's currently a bill that made it out of committee that is going to further open up the market. In part, the bill would allow separate skins for esports operators. So currently, casinos in Atlantic City and racetracks have esports skins, and each one has 3. And that, if you're an operator trying to do B2C esports wagering, you would need to get one of those skins, and there's not many left after the last 5 years. If each casino and racetrack only has 3, there's just not a lot of availability to get access to the market, which by default can serve to stunt the growth of the esports industry in New Jersey. So by creating a new set of skins exclusively for esports and putting that in the pocket of a casino or a racetrack, you're opening the market to a broader esports environment in New Jersey. So that's part of what the amendment would do.
That's interesting. So being a licensee both in Nevada and New Jersey, I do hold these jurisdictions, I do see them as the gold standard of regulation. I think hopefully we all agree on that. And it's great to see both jurisdictions being progressive, taking that leap of faith, introducing some type of esports betting. You got to start somewhere. Now, as an operator, I'll tell you right now, it isn't good enough. The process is similar today in Nevada as it is in New Jersey, and I've gone through that process of applying for various esports events, and it's a clunky, inefficient, backwards, not good process. I'll go on record as saying that. Better than nothing. So that should be noted as well. And certainly in 2015, I was excited when the Nevada Gaming Control Board was even open staking esports wagers. But that was 7 years ago. The process of educating the regulator on each and every tournament, having to get the regulators comfortable with the governing principles of that specific tournament, getting a wager approved, and then having to do it all over, a few months later, is not efficient. And it's one of the many reasons why casino operators have not embraced esports. They don't, A, have time for that, B, they don't even have the expertise to identify those events. In Nevada, we are in the process of recommending some changes. So the Esports Technical Advisory Committee was set up in January of this year by the current board, and which in and of itself shows that the current board is taking this very seriously, right? They realize what they know, what they don't know, and they curated a group of experts, some from the gaming space, betting space, technology, from the developers. We actually have representatives from Activision Blizzard on this board, so the largest game developer in the world, right? That's a pretty good coup. On this board, making recommendations so that the game control board can make changes. The recommendations that will likely be made next week are to whitelist tournament operators and game developers that are operating their own tournaments, where sportsbook operators will not have to apply, but can just take wagers on these events. Now, there are a list of requirements that the Nevada Gaming Control Board is telling said operator that you guys better make sure that the integrity is there. You better make sure that the results are posted on a national publication, which is a requirement for any professional sport. So on and so forth. There's about 7 or 8 requirements. I happen to think that's a great approach. if an operator is licensed in the state of New Jersey and Nevada, we've already approved them as a licensee, that they can take on responsibility of making these decisions. And of course, if they don't, then they'll be penalized with penalties, just like any time an operator fumbles and makes a mistake. So it's a very different approach. It's one that I'm excited to see the change and to see if that gives the operator the confidence and the flexibility to offer more wagers. With that, is that something that you think New Jersey would ever consider, or are there other alternative evolutions in terms of the process of getting wagers approved? And
I would say I don't see that because we have a statute that says each individual event has to be approved. So you would need a legislative change in order to have that. It sounds nice. Everybody wants to reduce the regulatory overhead. They have the experience, and obviously the more events that wagering is allowed on, it's better for everybody. It's better for the esports industry. It's better for the sports books. That being said, it's the same process as even in traditional sports like the NFL. We get requests for different types of prop bets all the time. So you can't treat one category of wagering more favorably than another. But to the extent the legislature would be amenable to that, it's possible. I know in Europe, which had sports betting, legalized sports betting long before us, they don't catalog. So there were sports books over there that would probably take a bet on 2 raindrops running down the window game. It's a different feel. Here we're really, really concerned with the integrity of the leagues, right? We want to make sure that when somebody's putting their own money on the line, that is a contest that's going to be executed fairly. We look to see integrity policies and everything. And so, that's what we do. What we can do, which I think is similar to what Seth is referencing, is you can get like a lot of group wagers proved sort of at once, like on a specific league. So, in that sense, it's not like each individual bet has to come in differently. But, typically, those requests will come in from either a sports book that wants to take wagers in a particular tournament, or they'll come in through the operator of that tournament. And, we basically go through the same process in ensuring that there is integrity and that, there's like an independent governing body. Like ESIC came up before, and they batched together a bunch of different tournaments and were able to get wagering approved from them. So, and that's another, difficulty that faces esports. It's like you don't always have a sports governing body that you see you always draw the analogy back to what everybody is so familiar with and watching TV, like the NFL or the NBA. Like they have a league front office. You don't always have that with esports. So you're starting to see that more and more. And like I said, the number of events that are approved for wagering only goes up. So it's definitely going to be an area where you start seeing the total handle go up and up year on year.
All right, thank you. So there was a mention of esports specific skins. Do you guys think that a sports book should be solely focused on esports betting? A general operator like BetMGM, Caesars, Valley, do we see them incorporating esports wagering as a part of their offerings? I'd love to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, I think if we take a step back and look, what are we trying to achieve, right? So I live here in Atlantic City. My dad opened one of the first casino ski resorts, and we've been here since that time. And one of the things you see is the clientele, I think Larry already said earlier, the clientele is aging up. And one of the things that I've seen in the casino industry, and I heard this from D2E, was what are you going to do to accommodate future younger generations? And the question said, well, no, eventually as they get older, they'll stop playing slot machines. They won't. That is what they said. It's ridiculous, but that's what they said. And that's, I call it the Titanic. Like, everyone sees the Titanic heading toward this iceberg, and nobody does anything about it because that's somebody else's job, and I'm not going to risk my job. This is the reality of it. And if we don't address the reality of things, we're all just wasting your time in a panel trying to look smart, right? The clientele has changed, and it has changed. One of the biggest generational changes is part of my job, because I do all of the intellectual property, to study generational changes. The biggest generational change maybe ever is millennials and Gen Z, especially Gen Z, are completely different society than what we were used to. Right? So I raised two of these beasts, and the reality is they're actually not beasts. They're actually nicer. They're more group oriented. They defend each other like none of us ever did when we were at least as Gen Xers were like fighting each other. But these guys are different. And they grew up with a generation where from day one there are iPhones or some sort of digital device, right? And there's this thing called agency, the ability for you to have an impact on what you're experiencing. So 70% of a casino floor is a slot machine, you hit a button, something happens. And psychologically, these things have powerful effects. But for the younger generations, they expect to do more than just hit a button. They want some sort of influence over the outcome. Even if it's not a direct influence, they want to have some say. And when they see these slot machine products, they're not going to age up into 45 and 50 and just dumb themselves down. This is not a product for them. So as you see, we were talking to a casino operator recently. He said, my average customer is 55. What are you doing to bring somebody else in? Well, we did an Esports event, and then as soon as the event was over, they went home. And so Esports doesn't work. I said, well, as soon as they don't change because they come in to see an Esports event or a concert of some younger musician. They are still the same people behavior-wise. So unless we accommodate the casino industry and the wagering industry to their habits and their behaviors, it's going to go away. That's it, right? That's it. And so what we're doing in our company, and I know Seth is doing, and Seth talks a lot about this, and I follow him on LinkedIn, which I suggest you do, because you guys are very good LinkedIn posts, is we have to start looking at different ways that behavior impacts different generations, and we have to modify the wagering product to meet those behaviors. And if we don't, the casino industry will start to fall off the cliff, right? And that's just I know it's kind of exaggeration, but it's really not. It's us taking the time to understand how societies change. Part of that is understanding also responsible gaming, right? Responsible gaming is something that was, the states like New Jersey and Nevada, they put responsible gaming rules in to protect the gamers. Responsible gaming for the younger generation is a requirement because they take care of each other. And if the company doesn't have proactive responsible gaming, these younger generations don't trust companies to begin with. Right? They already don't trust corporations. So if you don't have a responsible gaming arm of your company, they'll trust you even less. So being engaged with the customer on a whole different level than what companies are used to is part of the changes you have to see the casino industry make.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Anthony. And I do agree with your sentiment. However, I do think that there is a bit of a hybrid approach. So first of all, as a casino operator, the good news is I do think every generation, they do get that endorphin hit by winning a game of chance. I mean, Dave & Buster's wouldn't exist. It's a casino for kids, by the way. We haven't figured that out. But how do we incorporate gaming culture into our casinos so it's more relevant to future generations? And how is the thing that we integrate, how is there revenue associated with it? The casino is never going to integrate something that doesn't have a commercial application and revenue tied to it. I remember very clearly in the early 2000s, and definitely around the recession in 08, nightclubs became massive. And it was a way of tapping into a younger audience. I mean, there was a time, I'm sure many of you remember, where nightclubs were not a thing in the casinos the way they are today here in Atlantic City. But the reason that those did well is there was a direct revenue component overnight, and casinos were already accustomed to serving drinks, and it's an extension of something that we did. And so that's why I go back to esports betting. That's something we do. We are sportsbook operators. We have been for decades, at least in Nevada. It's a little newer, but that's something that we do. How can we establish esports betting as that first thing that proves to casino operators that the gaming enthusiasts, first of all, they have money in their pocket. They don't have money in their pocket, I'll tell you, as an operator, we don't really want it. Let me just go out and say that. That's number one. Are this customer that we're talking about willing to spend money? Love to touch on that. If they are they willing to spend money on something that we're offering? I think esports betting is that thing. So, I'd like to talk a little bit more. What can we as an industry, as people that are sitting here, clearly we believe in esports betting, how can we help the casinos take that leap of faith? Are there tools that they use that can make it easier for them to offer esports wagers? Is there technology? Are there companies that can help them market? CJ.
I mean, I was going to go back to it and somewhat to Anthony's earlier point about iGaming, how long that in New Jersey, how long that took to get to where it is now. Like it wasn't overnight. You know, the switch was flipped on in New Jersey, and the revenue from iGaming was a tenth of what was projected. And I think casino operators need to see proof of concept that people are going to wager on esports, that people are going to play skill-based games that are in the casino. And it needs time. And I think from a regulatory point of view, some of the stuff we talked about, if you're removing or diminishing some of those restrictions, like having an esports skin and making it easier to get new events and new wagers approved, it's going to allow the industry additional runway that if a company like Anthony has operating in New Jersey and those revenue numbers are public, it's like anything else. If it's working, other people are going to be quicker to embrace it. But when you have a barrier to entry, like for example, again, going back to a skin and market access, it's a catch-22. You might not get that chance because of the high cost of skin and getting into the game. So I think from a regulatory point of view, there's different things that the industry can do to help, like I can, help the industry get started. It might not happen overnight, but I guarantee you eventually, particularly with esports, give it a couple of years and it's gonna keep going up and from there.
New Jersey's been great. I mean, New Jersey, the Assembly, New Jersey, the DTE, everybody's been absolutely fantastic. The issue is we've had some failed starts, right? The Esports Entertainment Group, when you don't advertise an event, nobody wages on it. That's obvious, right? And we've had, when the Esports Entertainment Group got their license, the Valley's license, there was $10 million, right? So we can't, because my interest is not just in G3, my company, but also the state, because I live here and we raise our kids here. It's how do we make Atlantic City, the new Atlantic City, to appeal to a new demographic? And to Seth's point, he's on I think you're one of the advisors to Skills, right? Skills, online wagering, that kind of stuff is exactly what we are doing here with the DGE and our company has been working with the Assembly's been working with, and that, like CJ said, is going to take a little bit of time to get established, and the rules are a little vague, and we're trying to define what is an event and what is all those kind of things, right? But when it comes to the casino floor, which you have a lot more experience than any of us here, the reality is it's really hard to just put up an area for casino gaming and say that's for gamers, right? Because the success, I was this is an advisory group for Dave & Buster's years ago. The success of Dave & Buster's is a culture of you're going to come here for 2 hours, you're going to spend around $200, and you're going to have a good time. You're going to take pictures of yourself, and you have all these TikTok zones, social media zones. They know what they are, and GameCo and Gamblet. And I know you know these companies. Gamblet is a lot better than GameCo. They just, they had machines and they were unproven. They put them on the floor by themselves, and people really didn't know what to expect. Here's an arcade machine. I wager on it. I don't really know the rules, and it's all just confusing. And we can't expect that to work. It just won't. So how we create these sort of centers for casinos is something that we are working on. I mean, as Jim knows, we've done events here, and, room nights, those are easily, people need to stay somewhere, and we'll be able to figure that out. The trick is, how do we get them to engage with the product on the wagering side? So to do that is it takes more work, and, I can show you illustrations and images of what we have in mind, but the reality is the reason we did the esports wagering amendment was to provide easier access for companies to come into New Jersey to be able to experiment at a much more reasonable cost, right? The Esports Innovation Center at Stockton, the whole purpose is to bring in new technologies and bring in new companies that are also going to be part of that innovation, right? So I think New Jersey has created an ecosystem where those companies and those processes will be developed because it's a very friendly environment for them. We're also talking to the state about potentially incentives for companies to be able to come in and potentially get a tax write-off, we don't know. But this is the kind of environment that New Jersey is always pioneered on, and the DGE has been, I couldn't say partner, but what they have done to open up the space and really almost recruit companies like ours into the space is really the start of it. The assembly is back, everything you guys have done, and I'm very happy that we're a New Jersey company. I think we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. And to be clear, as I said earlier, I'm very proud of what Nevada and New Jersey has done. Regulation takes a long time. By the way, I've been, remember not that long ago when regulators in Nevada wouldn't even, give this thought the time of day. Everything changed in Nevada around 2015 when Governor Brian Sandoval and Chair A.G. Burnett got together and said, we need to make sure that we are innovative and stay ahead of this. And if it wasn't for leadership at that level, it wasn't going to happen. And I know that that's been a similar culture here in New Jersey, and it's got to start there. So, hats off. Some of my comments are controversial, but I also, I don't want to be the guy here waving the flag and the Kool-Aid. Let's talk about the challenges as much as, the long-term vision that I know we all believe in. Also, as a land-based operator, I clearly believe in driving traffic to our land-based casinos. That's what differentiates Atlantic City and Las Vegas. That's what creates jobs. That's what stimulates the economy. It's critical. However, mobile sports betting does some of those things. And in my experience in starting a new business, it's good to fish where the fish are, right? So where are the gamers? They're online. They're not currently in the casino. So starting by focusing online, focusing on mobile sports betting makes a lot of sense to me. Then once you get them, bring them into the casino through events, once you get them in the database. What I can tell you is we talked about Twitch a little bit, or at least in the last panel. So a week ago, I was in San Diego at TwitchCon. TwitchCon is a major convention for Twitch streamers, enthusiasts, developers, massive, tens of thousands of people. And you got to watch live tournaments. Twitch does run its own tournaments. They're part of Twitch Rivals, and they have something called Twitch Predictions. Predictions to me is a G-rated word for gambling. We don't want to be regulated. You have people make predictions, and everybody takes part, right? So here's an example where you have Twitch, the largest media broadcasting platform in esports, by 100 miles at a live event. You have tens of thousands of people watching, and they are at least participating in, gambling light. So to me, that's an example of an audience that wants to do the thing that we're talking about. How can we tap into that? Is there a relationship with Twitch or YouTube gaming? How do we tap into the online esports universe and bring gambling to those platforms? Is that a possibility?
Yes, it is a possibility. I mean, yeah. I guess it's weird because we're all, it's a fun panel. We are working on exactly that. Right, and I think that they.
Do you just want us to sign off an NDA, or that the
Yeah,
answer better?
eventually, I think we'll announce what we're doing, but I mean, one of the things, Amazon is one of our big strategic partners. Amazon owns Twitch, and one of the things that people have been looking for, so if you can imagine the fact that ESPN is dwarfed by this other thing called Twitch, right? Like on a nightly basis, I think there's anywhere from 3 to 6 million people on Twitch at any given moment. Like, million people like right now. Right. And what that means is it's a decentralized video processing, right? So instead of having this event, that event, this event, there's like thousands of things happening at one time. Some of them have one person watching, some of them have a million people watching. Now imagine if you take that and say, okay, now we're going to play a game, and the person that wins this game on this channel is going to get a peer-to-peer prize or a top score prize or something. And as soon as that's over, we're going to do it again and again and again. It's all KYC verified, everyone's over the age of 21. The kind of wagering I mean, it's kind of similar to like online wagering now with casino dealers, but now with video games. So instead of playing blackjack and poker, now we're playing Angry Birds, or we're playing, Connect 4 or Candy Crush, right? So if you can imagine that environment is coming, right? And that's going to create a lot of excitement. And I think that it really accomplishes two things. One, there's going to be wagering handle generated, probably a lot of it, because now you're wagering with friends. We like to call it real money video games, because I think it's a better word for what we're doing. Right? Sort of the Dave & Buster's model. Like, you're right, Dave & Buster's is sort of like gambling. But if we use a phrase, I think we should adopt this. Real money video games, it's a safer way to sort of bring the idea of just having a good time. Right? But real money wagering, when you have the people engaged on a one-on-one basis sometimes with the dealers, the people that they follow, streamers that have sometimes millions of followers, is going to be a really big thing that accomplishes the wagering handle and also grows the media space. So in a certain sense, it is an event and a wagering event at the esports event and a wagering event at the same time. How do you guys feel about those kind of things?
Well, you can't have wagers on the event itself when the tournament's held here. So, you saw that the issue that happens, which I touched on earlier, is when you have the sports governing body is also the tournament sponsor. So it would be the same thing as like the NFL trying to take sports bets. So you don't have that when you have the tournament here. So EEG encountered that when they had a tournament back in March. What I can say is what I think we will start seeing in the future is actually cross marketing. So we've been bringing up a lot of the analogy between internet gaming and some of the challenges we saw when apps first legalized versus where the industry is today. So one of the theories that is there was that there's going to be cannibalization, right? So Atlantic City's customers, instead of coming down here, they were going to play online, and it was really going to grow the gaming industry itself. You were just going to shift customers from coming in instead of staying home and betting on their phone. What happened was, instead, casinos were able to cross-market to those people. Say, oh, wow, you really like logging into BetMGM. Why don't you come down and stay a while? And so there was no cannibalization. I think now you see like EEG has their own esports-focused sports betting website in partnership with Bally's. They're going to be able to market, and they might be able to bring people down here as well. I think also, too, as you see the traditional sports books accepting more esports wagers, they'll be able to market also and bring people here as well. I think the larger message to just keep in mind is that this will take time. It doesn't happen overnight, and it could be years. So it's just about being patient, watching the little acorn grow into a tree.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Good news is esports is only getting bigger. This is not a fad. We're not missing a window. I think good things happen for those who wait. Ari, is this, we out of time or a few more minutes?
You have like 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. All right. So review, we've established. Dave & Buster's is an illegal casino operation. Esports is massive. No, just kidding.
Maybe take some questions.
Yes, that is where we're headed. So, questions from the audience. Give you warning, so please, somebody have a question.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Wade, and we are a gaming. We're into the gaming space as a startup, but we're technically a fintech company. So I would like for you to expand on why the NFL cannot take its own wagers.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's just part of the traditional sports betting model. It's not independent, right? So we look for the integrity. What the NFL does is they monitor the integrity of their own game. They make sure that they don't have players throwing games, they don't have any issues like the 1919 Chicago Black Sox, right? So they have their own integrity policy. They have people on the ground monitoring that. We also look at the sports books themselves, and we make sure that they're monitoring integrity, that they all communicate. There's the Sports Wagering Integrity Monitoring Association, SWIMA, that they're a part of, so they can see if there's like any unusual wagering activity on a particular event. So it's what we have. You know, you got to fit into the existing rubric of what we do. Like I said, we treat, you know, all of our children equally, so it's the same thing, right? We fit esports within that same sports wagering model that applies to everybody else. So, and also to take wagers, you also have like the licensing aspect that sometimes some of those larger organizations are so big that they make that business choice that we tend to avoid. You know, which is something, you don't limit what type of company would apply for a license, but, you know, generally speaking, I mean, it's not easy to get licensed in terms of taking wagers, so, you know, there's a lot of different barriers with regulation.
Yeah, and wait, I think, you know, it's also important to point out that we're just not be good business and probably not what their fan base is looking for. However, the NFL is a great example of a league that has incorporated sports betting into their culture. But obviously, you can't watch an NFL game without seeing advertisements from sportsbook operators, lines. There's now simulcasts where the broadcasters are specifically speaking to bettors. So they can embrace betting without actually offering wagers themselves.
Yeah, 100%. They all have partnerships with legal sports books, like, you know, DraftKings and FanDuel and everything. You'll see their commercials during games and stuff, where sometimes, you know, stadiums, individual teams are partnering with those books, and you'll see ads for those sports books, like if you go to a game.
Yeah, and data as well. You know, all the sports leagues have their official league data, and they partner with distributors to sell that data to the betting industry companies like Radar, BetGenius, and you know, similar things eventually we can see in the esports space.
So this would be similar to say that Twitch could never have its own wagering within Twitch, because that'd be like the NFL having its own wagering, correct? So Twitch would have to have a third party to handle its wagering.
Yeah, they have to be licensed, and for Amazon to go through that whole process, I know for a fact they won't. Right, so Twitch will not go through that process, or Amazon or any of those companies that are that large scale, because they are a provider to a lot of technologies, like the cloud servers that they have. They try to be a provider for everybody. That doesn't mean you couldn't use a Twitch stream, right? But that creates the difficulty of having to have that Twitch stream KYC separated from the general audience, right?
Yeah. And then, does anyone else have questions? So is the skins, is that just a New Jersey thing, or is that like a multi-state casino?
That's pretty much, I don't want to say everywhere, but most jurisdictions have skins. The number varies. You know, is it 1 per casino? Is it 3 per casino? In certain jurisdictions, extended skins to professional sports teams, where if you have a stadium or a sports franchise, you can have your own skin, which, you know, puts more leverage and power into the hands of the leagues through their teams. Certain jurisdictions do not have skins, like Tennessee, for example. It's a hefty license fee, but anyone who wants to open up a sports book in Tennessee does not need to talk to a racetrack or a team or a casino in order to do that.
So like DraftKings doesn't have to contact everyone, or DraftKings would have to contact every state?
Yeah, so you need a separate skin in every single jurisdiction that you do business in. So New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, you would need to have a separate deal with a casino or a racetrack or what have you in those jurisdictions. Sometimes, like if you have a big enough casino operator company like Caesars, that has properties in multiple jurisdictions, you can do one deal that will cover multiple states. And in the esports context, the skins are very relevant because we're at the point now where there's at least 15 states that have expressly said that esports events are acceptable events to wager on under the sports betting umbrella. So without separate legislation that addresses esports skins, you would fall under the sports betting skins in order to offer wagering on esports.
And to the committee that CJ and I are on, the national committee, we know of at least 31 states that want to expand into esports specific states.
Yeah, and there are a couple of states that have not yet said that esports is acceptable to wager on. Indiana expressly says that you can't, it's not approved. Iowa is another jurisdiction. I know in spring they had it in the bill and made it out of the House to allow it, and it didn't make it into the final bill. So, it's not just New Jersey and Nevada. There are a lot of other states that have esports front of mind and are allowing wagering on sports. But I think that unlike sports betting, there are a couple of states where there might be some barriers to entry.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have.
Just one more point. I just want to say that Twitch recently banned non-licensed gambling that streamers were promoting on the Twitch channel. So in regards to Twitch, yes, they wouldn't be licensed, but they're also abiding by the laws that apply in the United States, that they won't broadcast any gambling that is, not licensed. So I guess,
They're also making an announcement today on the rest of that.
Yeah, today. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much, Seth. Thanks, CJ. Our next panel will be starting in about 3 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah.